Greenery is one of the most important parts of making a good level. Whenever I run out of ideas for basically any type of decoration, the first thing I really think of is greenery. Really, this works for pretty much any type of level. It doesn't matter if it's realistic or not, just plant look good. But overall, usually this works pretty well in realistic levels or sometimes modern levels too. I find that very few creators actually take full advantage of this and don't really use greenery a lot in their levels. It doesn't really have to be a level to any specific theme. Even modern levels look pretty good with greenery. However, I guess not all levels look good with greenery. For example, factory levels might not. So instead, environment is one of the most important parts to making a good level. Whoa, it's Wonka. World building is really cool, and it can make the experience of a level go from just decent to really good. But what actually is world building? And I kind of decided, hey, why not make a video kind of exploring that? And I figured the best way to start was to look at the backbone of world building, which is environment. Wrong sound effect. World building is almost exactly what it sounds like, using theming, greenery, or other ideas to make something seem more real or come to life. There are plenty of ways to go about world building, but one of the easiest ones is just to apply really heavy theming, sort of like in the game DCC Tropical Freeze. DCC Tropical Freeze's world building is some of the best of any game I've ever played, and the reason why is mostly due to vegetation and greenery, as from earlier. The game does a great job of creating immersive backgrounds using tons of interesting plants and weird shapes, and overall the levels really feel alive. Between movements and the way the game looks, every level has a pretty distinct art style and theme, and they all kind of work together. There's this minecart factory level that uses these slow-moving gears and tight gameplay to sort of show how gameplay can intertwine with the theme in world building. DCC Tropical Freeze does a really good job of showing how greenery can make a world more realistic and interesting. But you can also use greenery in less realistic art or less realistic worlds, and it works just as well most of the time. Completely the opposite of DCC, Yuma Nikki shows how to well execute a very abstract environment. Nothing in Yuma Nikki makes sense, yet it's all connected and somewhat sensical at the same time. Environment really carries most of Yuma Nikki. The world is very empty, but the giant floating backgrounds and all of the interesting themes and ideas work together to create a very full world at the same time. With the exception of maybe some of the forest areas, the entire thing is abstract, and it's really interesting to sort of explore around this world. And Yuma Nikki does a really good job of fleshing out that world. Yuma Nikki very subtly uses environment to really just suck the player into the whole world. It's a very unique game, yet somehow it feels very real at the same time, and it works together to create a very unique experience. Okay, I talk about games a lot on this channel, so for once let's talk about something different. Let's talk about books. The Chronicles of Narnia is one of my favorite examples of this. It creates a very descriptive world over tons of time through many different books, and it does it very elegantly and very well. In addition, a lot of games will come with books attached to them. For example, the SimCity Manual or Plants vs. Zombies, the official guide to protecting your brains. Sometimes, if done right, these can add extra lore and interesting ideas to the world. Other times, it can just be a disaster. Okay, nobody reads. Let's go back to talking about games. Rain World has one of the most unique environments of any game I've ever played, mostly due to tons of greenery and very unique music and animals populating such a unique landscape. Dead Cells is yet another game that blends environment and gameplay so well. Dead Cells world can be really easily described as majestic, and there's tons of little bits of lore and secrets hidden around everywhere. The wiki page is so interesting that you could take an entire day just reading through every single thing that's happened in the history of this world. And then there's Samorost. Samorost is a point-and-click from 2003 developed by Amanita Games, and it is by far one of the most atmospheric games that you can play. Samorost has a very interesting art style, combining realistic images with fictional characters, and it works well to create a very unique atmosphere not seen in many games. All three of the Samorost games feature tons of different environments, and each one of them is unique and interesting in its own way, from factories to some guy's living room to forests. It works very well to bring the player into the world of Samorost. But another really good way to bring players into your world is music. The Secret of Monkey Island has some of the best music. You know what? I'll just let it speak for itself. The secret of Monkey Island as a whole has a really good atmosphere and very, very heavy pirate theming to create a very unique environment. But one of the biggest contributors to how well this environment works is the music. The music has a very heavy pirate theming, but it's still unique and very interesting. And overall, the music sounds really nice and works really well with pretty much every environment you're in. The only downfall of this game is that some areas don't have music. But the colors, the art style, the music, and the theming work really well to convey part of the story, almost as much as the gameplay does. And it creates for a very unique and interesting environment, especially for the time. But I've spent 5.5 minutes rambling on about how environments are created, but how do you actually make an environment for a level? There are tons of ways to go about this, but here are some of the most important parts. What is a vague theme? So when I started on my level can't decide, I started with literally one word as the theme, pollution. From there, the first part I designed is a city, and from that point you can branch off and explore different ideas. Once you have that base theme down and start building, you can start exploring more themes and coming up with new ideas, and have the theme slowly progress into something new, sort of like the later city parts. Now, what about inspiration? When trying to make an environment, it seems logical that the best form of inspiration to get is from the environment around you. That's a freaking lake. You can do this by reference images, but I find it's a lot more entertaining and gets a lot more out of it if you actually do it well somewhere. Traveling and building a level can create a lot of interesting memories associated with a level, and a lot of times it can make levels look better because you have actual reference. Like, did you know that part of Sonk was built in Paris? No, you probably didn't. Style is pretty self-explanatory as well. It's just basically what type of level you're making. Sometimes this can change the type of environment you want to build, other times it works really well to just do something unique. Environment works best in pretty much any style, but it's still important to know what style you're doing so you can tailor the environment you want to make or know if you have the skill to do it. And finally, references. References are by far one of my favorite ways to convey an environment. Adding little details here and there can do a really good job of giving a world more depth because there's tons of other things to look at that you can see, and the real world has tons of random crap in it everywhere, so it kind of makes sense to put that in a level. I've already talked about how much I like references before, and how I put references in pretty much all of my levels, but that video was a long time ago, so I'll go over it again. Ever since Sonk, I've been putting references in all of my levels, because I find it adds a lot more depth, and I always enjoy getting references in other levels, so I thought, why not put some in mine? They're a really good way to show appreciation for anything, or just to put references to games you enjoy and see if other people get them or notice. For example, every level I've done since Michigan's death has a Michigan icon in it, and I do it just to honor Michigan, because Michigan-based. Overall, I think references just help sell a theme a lot, and that's really, like, the most important thing to creating an environment, is just putting little details there, things that most people wouldn't notice, but when you do, it works really well to create a very fleshed out world. Either way, that's pretty much everything I have. I know this video kind of got sidetracked a lot, but overall, I'm pretty proud of it, and I hope you learned something about how to create environments. Wait, this time I also have bloopers. Summer Roast is a point-and-click adventure. Wait, no, wait, over the bottle.
Once it goes through, it's gonna... So you hear that?
Yeah.
That's the press release. Bottle's already mushy.
Mushy? Okay, are you filming?
From Sega. This is a very quality macro right here. I'm sure this is exactly what this recording is supposed to be. Shut up!
What am I doing? Okay.